You're listening to another great podcast in the MyMac Podcasting Network.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the show where we take a wander around the week in Apple news, reviews, technology, associated products, and all sorts of other things that catch our eye. This is another episode of the Essential Apple Podcast. Hello everybody and welcome to this week's episode. Well, this has been a week that was, as they like to say. Poor old Indonesia can't get a break, can they? Not only did they have a huge earthquake followed by a deadly tsunami, but that set off a volcanic eruption. Haiti has been struck with an earthquake, and South Korea by a typhoon. And then, on top of that, Bloomberg came out with a scary story about a hardware hack, which has turned into a massive mystery. Microsoft have pulled their Windows 10 update. I discovered a big downside to Apple News on the Mac, and a data aggregation company called Apollo left their database with billions of data points open to all. So, there we are. Well, I'm not alone. Here to talk through the stories with me is Nick. Hello, Nick. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thanks, Simon. Wasn't that it? Haven't you just gone through the news? Aren't we supposed to sign off now and
Yes,
go home?
That's it. That's all the news for this week. No, there are more stories than that. It's been a very busy week in the news. Well, I suppose really, we should talk first of all about the big Chinese hack story, which, started Wednesday or Thursday, I can't remember. Bloomberg broke a story which is called The Big Hack, How China Used a Tiny Chip to Infiltrate US Companies. I don't know, did you see the original story, Nick, or did you kind of come into it like me, sort of after the first wave?
Yes, I think I probably was after the first wave, but I certainly saw it pop into my news feed and thought, oh,
yeah.
Wouldn't someone have noticed that? That was my first thought.
Well, yeah. I mean, for anybody who doesn't know, Bloomberg, the story is that the Chinese manufacturers who supply motherboards to a company called Supermicro, who make specialist servers for the industry, had their motherboards compromised by the Chinese, somebody in China inserting a very tiny spy chip. And they've got a photograph of what they claim to be the spy chip, and it is on somebody's fingertip here, and it is tiny. They're kind of suggesting that this was inserted into the board and then created a hardware backdoor to allow Chinese intelligence to gather all sorts of, data from these servers. I had an initial problem with it in that first of all, this sort of thing isn't that easy to do. You would have to put this in very early in the design stage, because something like that, it's not like a piece of Lego you just clip onto the board at the end and go, ha ha ha, you're compromised. That's not how it works. And I'm pretty sure people who make specialist servers have, a pretty intense development team who, know exactly what should be doing what on their boards.
Yeah, and I would have thought when you're designing something as well, when you get it back, you don't just say, oh, yeah, that's what we designed, without really looking at it.
I mean, I know this chip is tiny and could, there was, in the story, they're saying that it could be disguised as some sort of signal modifier piece. But my other problem is that they claim for a start, they claim that it affects about 20 companies, but they only name Amazon, Apple, and Supermicro themselves. They say it affects up people like, possibly intelligence agencies, possibly a major bank, but nobody's named. they claim to have spoken to, over 100 people familiar with the matter, and yet not one single person is prepared to either be named or to go on the record. So this is all unnamed sources off the record have told us. The only thing that stopped me dismissing it out of hand as crackpot conspiracy theory was that it was from Bloomberg.
Yeah, that's right. You would have normally we expect Bloomberg to at least have a grasp on the situation.
Yeah. But then Amazon, Apple, Supermicro, and the Chinese government all issued vigorous rebuttals, which, to be fair to Bloomberg, they did actually report in full on their own site. All the links for this, by the way, are in the show notes, of course. Amazon said, it is untrue that AWS knew about a supply chain compromise, an issue with malicious chips or hardware modifications when acquiring Elemental. It is untrue that AWS knew about servers containing malicious chips or modifications in data centers in China, or that we worked with the FBI to investigate or provide data about malicious hardware. And that goes on for some time, basically rebutting every allegation. Apple have said, over the course of the last year, Bloomberg has contacted us multiple times with claims, sometimes vague, sometimes elaborate, of an alleged security incident at Apple. Each time we have conducted rigorous internal investigations based on their inquiries, and each time we have found no evidence to support any of them. Apple has never found...
I like this.
Go on.
Go on, carry on.
I was going to say...
I was just going to say...
Yeah, go on.
I was just going to say... After you.
All right, we can be very clear. Apple has never found malicious chips, hardware manipulations, or vulnerabilities purposely planted in any server. Apple has never had any contact with the FBI or any other agency about such an incident. We are not aware of any investigation by the FBI, or nor are any of our contacts in law enforcement. And they go on, it goes on, and they have also stated quite openly, we are not under a gag order or any other confidentiality agreement. So, they can, if they were under a gag order, they could be told not to say things, but they cannot be, forced to deny such a thing. And then the Chinese government have also said, Supermicro, again, have strenuously denied it in the most robust terms, and the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs has said, as a resolute defender of cybersecurity, maybe, we advocate for international community to work together on tackling cybersecurity threats. That said, everybody is desperately trying to spy on everybody else, and I don't really think that the Chinese are probably any worse than anybody else, the truth be told. And that they are probably just as concerned about... if such a hardware hack was actually possible and viable, then nothing would be safe anywhere, ever.
What I was going to say was I just got visions of a rigorous investigation. Someone rushing around along to a blade in a server and pulling it out with a microphone, with a magnifying glass.
Looking for a little tiny...
I can't see anything.
I can't see it.
It's a bit bizarre, isn't it? They're so opposite. There is absolutely no meeting place between those who are making the claims.
There is no wiggle room at all in that. Then Bloomberg said, we stand by our Chinese chip story, and Amazon, again, this was Ars Technica, reported that one, but it's all over the web, the whole thing. You type in, Apple, Amazon, Chinese hack, and you'll get a million hits. So Bloomberg stood by their story, and said, what did they say? Something along the lines of, we've been investigating this for a year, I think. And then have interviewed all these different people. What does it say? Apple laid out its case against the story in a lengthy post on the website. No one from Apple ever reached out to the FBI. Right? Amazon's response was equally emphatic. Bloomberg reporter Jordan Robertson, one of the co-authors, has stood by the story on Bloomberg TV, no less, he said he had talked to 17 anonymous sources in US intelligence agencies and at the affected companies who confirmed the story. It is clear someone isn't telling the truth, but it's hard to tell what the real story is. Apple ruled out a possible theory. We are not under any kind of gag order or other confidentiality obligation. Right, a blog post by a computer security expert, Nicholas Weaver, argues the situation Bloomberg describes is at least plausible. Well, I don't think any of us doubting that it could be done.
No, I don't think we are. I think the question is, if it has been done, show us evidence of it actually being done. I mean, they've shown us what is supposed to be the tiny little chip, but show us it on us actually there.
Yes.
They haven't shown us a picture of that, have they?
No. So but Bloomberg have stood by their story, as I say. But my gripe, as I earlier said, is everybody involved, allegedly over 100 people and 17, intelligence people, none of which are prepared to be named, none of which are prepared to go on the record, and even after Apple and others have denied it in the most strenuous and granular terms, to be honest. They've refuted pretty much every single point one by one. And nobody has stepped forward and said, okay, I'll come forward and say, this is what I know.
I just don't understand how it would benefit Amazon, Apple, Supermicro, or the Chinese government to strenuously deny it. I mean, maybe the Chinese government don't understand what benefit it would be to Amazon, Apple, or Supermicro.
Well, obviously, Amazon and Apple, and certainly Supermicro's stock price took a massive hit on the breaking of the story.
I should expect it to, really.
Yeah, I mean, Apple and Amazon lost about 1%, I think, after it broke, but that's probably neither in or there. That's probably just trading vagaries. I don't.
These 17 people they've been talking to aren't analysts, are they? By any chance?
Well, they're supposed to be security.
Or they're short sellers.
They should be. They're supposed to be security specialists, or intelligence people. Obviously, Apple are going to deny it because people who run massive data centers, it would be a massive blow if people were no longer to trust them because all their servers have got Chinese spy chips in them.
But the truth is, we know from our experience of Apple that when they do get stuff wrong, it might take them a while to admit it, but eventually they will.
Yeah.
I don't know. This just all smells wrong to me.
Yeah. So the Apple insiders. Yeah. BuzzFeed then had a piece. Apple insiders say nobody internally knows what's going on with Bloomberg's China hack story. And again, this is basically multiple senior Apple executives speaking with BuzzFeed News, speaking on condition of anonymity so that they could speak freely, have all denied and expressed confusion with the report that the company's servers had been compromised by a Chinese intelligence operation. We tried to figure out if there was anything which transpired that is even remotely close to this. We have found nothing. Amazon and Apple issued uncharacteristically strong, detailed denials, which we've already talked about. A senior security engineer directly involved in Apple's internal investigations, which he described as endoscopic, noting they had never seen a chip like the one described in the story, let alone found one. I don't even know if something like this actually exists, this person said, noting that Apple was not provided with a malicious chip or a motherboard, nothing, no hardware, no chips, no emails. Equally puzzling is the assertion that it was party to an FBI investigation. A senior Apple legal official told BuzzFeed News the company had not contacted the FBI nor been contacted by FBI, CIA, NSA or any other government agency in regards to incidents described in the report. As they say. So then it says Apple's...
We're a bit stuck, aren't we, really? Because we've got one group saying, no, this is absolutely true. We've got evidence. We can't give it you, but we've got evidence that it's absolutely true. And another group saying, yes, it definitely isn't true. Really, it's just a matter, toss a coin, really.
It's a very, very strange story. And then, just to finish up, the last day or so, the Department of Homeland Security has no reason to doubt Apple's denial of the supply chain compromise. And the UK cyber agency backs Apple and Amazon denials of Chinese hacking. And that was in the Telegraph. So it's very, very muddied. And if it wasn't Bloomberg, I'd put it down as a wingnut job, to be honest. I will, my personal take, and this is my personal view, it smacks of FUD.
Yeah.
I don't know who would benefit from that or why, but there's not one piece of hard evidence. And to me, and you're a similar sort of age to me, Nick, so you would remember this. I mean, it really stinks to me of a kind of Manchurian candidate, Reds under the bed, Cold War conspiracy hysteria,
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Yeah.
Almost James Bondian kind of plot. In many ways, although I could see the appeal of such a thing, if you could achieve it without being detected, you would have unfettered access to all sorts of things. But the complexity of doing it, and
the chances of actually being found out should be fairly high, surely.
Yeah, well, because I'm pretty sure
you're actually putting something physical on the chip. It might be tiny, but you're actually putting something that shouldn't be there on the chip and on the circuit board.
On the circuit board, and that would have to be designed in really, really early in the development process. Otherwise, because as I say, you can't just stick it on. It's not like putting a GPS tracker on a car. I'm pretty sure that as clever and frightening as it sounds, and possibly doable if you were really deep state dug in, I'm sure there are a lot easier ways to compromise data. What's
confusing is that Bloomberg are so convinced by the information that they've got.
Yeah. I don't know. The only thing that I could think that anybody would kind of benefit is exactly a kind of Cold War hysteria to whip up anti-Chinese sentiment. Because, I'm not going to go into the politics. I think most people listening to this show can figure out what that, might possibly be related to. But
the thing is, the only sort of hysteria it's going to create is with techies, because the average person in the street really couldn't care less one way or another about this story, probably hasn't heard about it.
And even if they have, let's face it, most people don't give a monkeys about Facebook siphoning off all their data.
This is true.
They'll happily give away all of their personal secrets for a free message board.
Just by asking them, effectively.
Yeah. So
weird.
Very, very strange. Yeah, it's all a bit. Yeah, I don't know, and that is going to rumble on, I suspect. And however it pans out, somebody is going to take a massive hit. If Bloomberg continued to defend it, and then it turns out that it's a complete put-up job, that's
going to discredit Bloomberg somewhat.
Their journalistic integrity is going to take an enormous hit. And well, if
it were the other way around, there'd be a lot of companies that you'd be saying, "Well, hold on a minute, why were you lying?" Yeah, it's a weird one.
It's
definitely
very, very strange. So there we go. We'll just have to see what happens with that.
Yeah,
there we are. I really don't know what to make out of it. It was a sort of, it's almost James Bondian, isn't it? The whole thing is just bizarre.
It is, yeah. You'd expect sort of halfway through, in the data center, something coming out of the board and plugging itself in.
Yeah,
something like that.
It's very
with some exciting soundtrack playing in the background.
Oh dear, yeah. Right. Well, here's a couple of short ones, which are sort of slightly linked. Tim Cook is to speak at a European data protection conference in Brussels later in the month. This was on Mac Rumours. Tim Cook will give the keynote speech at Debating Ethics, Dignity and Respect in a Data-Driven Life, a public session of the conference set to take place on Wednesday. So there we go. I mean,
Mhm.
but yeah, that's not really consistent with somebody who is a bit lax about their stuff, is it? And also, apparently, Apple has topped Interbrand's best global brand list for the 6th year running.
Well, that's not really very surprising, is it? I mean, they're
No,
just such an iconic
it's not particularly
company,
surprising.
and the goods they produce are so iconic.
Yeah. What's it say here? I mean, this is Interbrand score companies based on 10 categories: clarity, commitment, governance, responsiveness, relevance, engagement, differentiation, consistency, authenticity, and presence. Google are in second place, and Amazon, I think, a third. So there we go. Just yeah, that's not much of a story, really, is it? It just there we go. Of course, we've seen quite a lot of things. iPad Insight put out a story saying open season on Apple, Bloomberg and others take aim. And I kind of agree with this. It's very much Apple have released new stuff, and the merest whiff of anything not being perfect. People strike up the band and oh no, we're all doomed.
In some ways, Apple seem to get it. I mean, don't get me wrong; they are one of the largest companies, so in some ways, it's inevitable they're going to get all this attention.
Yeah.
But I think it's true of all large companies, really.
Yeah.
You put yourself. You produce stuff that you want to be perfect, but you know that it's not because nothing is perfect.
No.
And people, well, because they can make money out of it.
Oh, yeah.
In the end, it's down to money, isn't it?
It's clicks.
Yeah, it's clicks. They can make money out of it. So why wouldn't they? Kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I've also linked one here from Forbes, which, if it actually loads, but they published a piece, and it was the iPhone XS is fighting serious problems, with the charge gate, quote unquote, and beauty gate, and apparently some of them have got LTE problems, and they all sound like teething problems to me.
Yes, they probably are.
The charging thing, it appears that some iPhones, if you plug them in while they're asleep, will not actually charge. You have to wake the screen up to get them to start to charge.
Yeah, I saw a video, a YouTube video. I can't remember his name now. The guy who did it, and he'd got several iPhones of various types, and they all behave differently. Not everyone behaved differently, obviously. Some behaved one way, some behaved another.
Yeah.
And so there's definitely a problem there. But I mean, to call it a gate is a little bit.
Yeah, it sounds to me. I've seen reports of also people saying.
Disingenuous.
Yes, and I've also seen people reporting that it's not just the newest phones. Some of the older phones, 8s and 7s, have been.
Of phones.
So that sounds more like it's a bug. And I've also seen already reported that the 12.1 update fixes it. So that sounds like a software bug, basically, of some sort. How and why different phones behave.
As we were talking about before we started, when you having a beta test with a few 100,000 people is good, but as soon as you put it out to the millions and millions of people that have got iPhones,
there
are going to be one or two.
There are always going to be things. Beta testing is great, and it helps you find big problems or avoid big problems, or get user feedback on we don't like this and we do like that. But as you say, when you start talking about 500 million devices,
yeah, that's right. And when the more complex your software gets, the more likely there's going to be a little corner that you don't. I mean, in a very small way, coding at work, and it doesn't matter how thorough you are at trying to think, oh, they might click on that, or they might click on that, and then therefore I have to code to make sure that's taken into account. Always the odd one.
Oh yeah,
that sneaks through and does something completely unexpected.
Well, and there's always edge cases. There are always edge cases, and weird edge cases only crop up when you've got 500 million people using a device, because sometimes these things are weird interactions between, a variety of different, if you have this service on and that thing installed and do this, then, there's a weird problem. I don't think that the new phones have serious problems. They have teething troubles, as far as I can tell.
Well, I've not heard that looks. No.
Right, you're breaking up a bit there, but say that again.
Oh, right.
Nick,
I was just saying. I don't think there's anything insurmountable. Come to light yet.
No, I don't either. I think a lot of this stuff is, as you say, it's clickbait. Shouting Apple has a problem with XYZ will get you clicks, and clicks make for ad revenue on the whole. Talking about iOS 12, apparently iOS 12 is now installed on 50% of active devices, outpacing iOS 11 adoption. That's
pretty impressive.
That's pretty impressive. What's that? In a week? Is it 2 weeks?
Yeah.
September the 18th to October the 6th. So, yeah. According to this, iOS 12, as of October the 6th, iOS 12, 50%, iOS 11, 42.91%, older, 708%. Well, I'm pretty much guessing that older, which if you look at their graph is pretty much flat, is devices that are not eligible. And probably not eligible for iOS 11 either.
Yeah, possibly. And the fact is, the way Apple play it, it becomes more and more obvious that there's an update waiting for you.
Yeah.
I think the last time my watch must have warned me about 5 times that there's an update.
Yeah.
And I think the last time it said, "I'll do it tonight for you if you like."
Yeah.
Or words to that effect.
Yeah.
And I said, "Oh, okay then."
All right then. Yeah. So 50%. Of course, I'm sure that's pretty much helped this time, because if you can run iOS 11, you can run iOS 12.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure that means, everybody who could was probably already on iOS 11. That means that, the update is just to press a yes, okay button. And if everything that's not on iOS 11 is probably unable to run iOS 11. So why would you not? Is, I think, the simple answer to that.
Oh, well, some people just like ignoring notifications.
But there we go. And this one's not really much of a surprise, but Frostbite's had a piece. Apple's A12 Bionic chip is nearly as fast as the best desktop CPUs. And I don't think there's much of a surprise in that. That's been coming for some time. The only, people said that about the the A11 Bionic. So there we go.
Yes, we can't keep getting faster. I mean, the fact is, desks move anywhere near as fast as mobile chips do.
No.
In their upgrade cycles. So, yeah, it's bound to catch up eventually.
Well, yeah, everything will level off. According to the review, Apple is understating the performance of the A12 as compared to the previous generation. Apple said the A12 is 15% faster than an A11. They've said A12 here, but they mean A11. The review revealed that the number is actually 40%. So, yeah.
Gosh, that's quite a big difference.
Well, I mean, it depends how you want to benchmark it, I'm sure. I suspect Apple would rather claim that it's 15 or 20% faster and know that it's probably better than that, than to say it's 40% and then have a load of people going, well, I did a bench test and I only got 32.7. So, because it would happen. It would happen if Apple claimed that they got a 40%, improvement. Loads of people would be testing it, desperately trying to prove that they didn't. So,
oh, of course they would. Yeah.
So,
and not only that, I mean, emojis are one of those things that people vote very easily and mean almost nothing. It's a little bit like in the keynote, I think they said that the watch was much bigger.
Yeah.
And it was 30% bigger, which went to pieces. So it's a strange definition of the word much, in my opinion. Yeah. I mean, I know that I've heard people talk about it since who have said it feel a lot bigger. The screen feels bigger. And I have no doubt that that it'll look beautiful because Apple designed it. But uh, I just think sometimes, saying 30% sounds a lot.
Yeah.
You start with something very small.
It's not that much.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's probably pretty visible. I suspect the biggest thing is, of course, because they've reduced the bezels, haven't they? That's the big,
Yes,
the
yes.
big thing.
So
It
it
now
will
goes
look,
out to
yeah,
the rounded edges,
look bigger.
so it's going to feel bigger. I mean, on my watch, you don't really notice the bezels because the interface is black. So you know, but people said, oh, if you use one of the full sort of full screen photo faces.
Yes.
It becomes obvious that there is a considerable black margin, and now there's not, which means that if you like the photo faces or whatnot, it feels much nicer. So there we are.
And I think the benchmarks are very similar. Most of them show percentages.
Oh yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily tell you anything very much. We talked about the keynote, and one of the things I said about the keynote was that, really the keynote for me was just look, our phone and watch are better and fast. It's what we come to expect from Apple, and that's a good thing. That's a good thing. That they're pushing the boundaries forward all the while, which is what we want, really.
Yeah, didn't I? And on that, I had some feedback here from Scott Wilsey from the Pocket Size Podcast. He said, honest feedback here. I don't understand the "it was so dull" thing. Apple very rarely has anything revolutionary. So many years people say they were underwhelmed, and yet Apple keeps selling more than ever. I think often when people watch the keynote, they abandon their historical perspective and forget that, generally speaking, Apple keynotes are not that amazing. I agree it's possible something was not announced that was intended to be announced, but for the stuff they did announce, it was fairly typical, especially following a year when they introduced the iPhone X. They're not going to do a change that big 2 years in a row. I don't see the disappointment at all. I think it's usually just because they didn't announce something that disappointed people personally were looking for. Well, yeah, I agree with that on the whole. As I said to Scott in reply, I wasn't particularly disappointed in what was announced, and I'm sorry if that's how it came across. I was trying to say that I felt the presentation felt a bit flat, and it was more about the sort of fire in the belly for me that was a little. I know Tim's not Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs would stride onto that stage and totally, command the audience, and he was a showman par excellence. And
you see, thanks for the feedback, Scott, by the way. Good feedback. I still think he was responding to me because I felt a bit disappointed by it. I felt that it was. I agree that Apple are an increment, not throwing tons of stuff at it every time. I just felt this one was a little bit, look at the wonderful things we've done.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a lot new. There was very, very little new. If you think about it, they talked about were very small in comparison to previous years. So I think historically looking back, there's always been something new, something, and it doesn't have to be anything particularly big. I mean, thinking they introduced copy and paste, that was a big thing for me. I thought, hey, great.
Hooray, copy and paste, yeah.
So it doesn't have to be big. I just felt on the whole, there wasn't a lot new. Definitely there was. They'd obviously done huge amounts of work to improve its speed and the way it worked and the elegance of it and all that stuff. But there was very little that I could point at and say, "Oh, that's new," and that's new.
I mean,
that's new.
I thought. I mean, obviously the fall detection was new. That really impressed me. I did like that, and the.
And I wasn't saying there wasn't anything new either.
No,
I mean, there were some new things. I just felt it was a little.
I'm still pretty convinced that the 9 to 5 Mac leak took the oomph out of it. To be honest,
yeah. As I say, but for me that's not true because I didn't see the 9 to 5 link. So
no, fair enough. But I also still think that maybe that there was something that didn't make it And
possibly.
I'm pretty sure that there was something that didn't make it, and it was almost certainly the air power. Because they touted that so hard last year, and it was going to be fabulous. And the word is that it's run into massive technical difficulties, and they can't release it if it's not ready. But they didn't even say so. That's the thing I think that makes some people flat. They might have been better off to say, the air power, and we told you it would be ready. They might have been better to just come clean and say, look,
Although they did say right at the beginning of the keynote, didn't they? Yeah, we're going to talk about 2 items today.
Yeah, or the three most...
The iPhone and the...
Yeah, the sort of the 2 most personal products or whatever it was. So, but...
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, there we go. Well, before we move on to any more, Nick, shall we have a short break and let John Nemo open the hardware store and tell us what he's got today?
Sounds good.
Okay, take it away, John.
I'm using my iPhone today again to record out in the car because we have 2 items that definitely involve transportation. The first one is from a company called ingearauto.com. INGEARAUTO, ingearauto.com. The product is called AutoXscape, AutoXscape, all one word, AutoXscape, vehicle-mounted, life-saving flashlight, $40, on sale. Slash, bash, and flash. There's a user's manual, a card that says welcome to peace of mind, a clamping bracket, and some 3M adhesive, and a couple of screws. Those are the accessories. The main event takes some batteries, and at one end is a very, very strong, sharp point for smashing the window in your car when you are stranded or falling over a bridge on your way into the Thames or whatever river you happen to be falling into. The batteries are 3 AAAs. I just confirmed that. I had put those in there a few days ago, screwing the battery cover back on. When you pull off smashing tip at one end, underneath is a strange shaped knife that can be used to slit and cut your seatbelt, again, to help you get out of your car in an emergency. This is all described on the website that we have in our show notes for this week, and it's also described in the user manual. How good is the flashlight? Let me put that cover back on so I don't cut myself. Just a second. When you turn the flashlight on, the first thing you get is a strong, bright, directional, very good, powerful beam. Press it again, you get a half brightness beam. Press it a third time, and you get a flasher, flashing SOS in Morse code. Fascinating. I haven't seen that since I was in the Boy Scouts. Then you press it again, it turns it off. So for $40 US, you have an always with you, wherever you happen to be, seatbelt knife, flashlight, and window smasher. Have a look at the AutoXscape vehicle-mounted life-saving flashlight, because you can mount it anywhere in your vehicle or anywhere in your shop, anywhere you happen to be, for protection and peace of mind, from ingearauto.com. I'm still in the garage, but now we are looking at the beautiful new grips on my bicycle. The company is called Grab On Grips. That's GRABONGRIPS, grabongrips.com. And they sent me Grab On Grip covers. Turn your present grips into comfortable foam grips with a minimum of work. Slide these high-quality EPDM foam sleeves onto the existing grips for a great feel. I did it the other day. I took the new grips that I got from Grab On Grips, slid them over my terrible old hard rubber grips on my bike, and the new Grab On Grip covers, model MC402, 5-inch grip covers, fits 1¼ inch to 1½ inch outside diameter, extra durable EPDM foam, resists gas, oil, ozone, UV, satisfaction guaranteed. Then when I'm out cycling, it's starting to cool off here in the morning, I wear my painter's gloves with my grab-on grip covers, and my wrists and hands are much, much more comfortable. Price in the U.S. on Amazon.com is $13. That is a great price for comfortable bike or motorcycle riding. Well done, grab-on grip covers. That's it for Nemo's Hardware Store. Back next week.
Thank you, John. And as always, all the links for the relevant products are in the show notes. Well, Nick, those are the sort of big stories of the week. We've got a few more. We've been going quite a while, so I don't think we'll spend too long on most of these. In the security field, Apple and Facebook are among tech firms lobbying against Australia's encrypted data law. And for anybody who's not aware, the Australian government are attempting to pull a similar kind of stunt to the British government, and asking to have a backdoor to private encrypted data. Australia in August has proposed fines of up to 10 million Australian dollars, 7.2 million US dollars, for institutions and prison terms for individuals who do not comply with a court request to give authorities access to private data. As usual, the government has said the proposed law is needed amid a heightened risk of terror attacks. Yeah, of course it is, because you're actually more likely to be hit by a meteorite than you are actually to die in a terror attack. That is the truth, statistically. Facebook, Alphabet, Apple and Amazon will jointly lobby the lawmakers to amend the bill ahead of its parliamentary vote expected in a few weeks' time. Any kind of attempt by interception agencies, as they are called in the bill, to create tools to weaken encryption is a huge risk to digital security, said Lizzie O'Shea, a spokeswoman for the Alliance for Safe and Secure Internet. And then it goes on. I mean, it's much of more of the same. More of the same.
It's lawmakers thinking that if they're given a wand and they say the magic words,
yes,
somehow a backdoor will appear that no one else in the world will know about.
Yeah. So there we go. So hopefully, the might of the big tech agencies might have some effect. Who can tell? Also, New Zealand is to order tourists to hand over phone passwords at the border. This was in the Independent. New Zealand has in fact enacted this law, which is privacy rights campaigners have denounced a new law in New Zealand under which it will allow border officials to demand tourists unlock any electronic devices, including mobile phones, so they can be searched. Visitors who refuse to hand over their device passwords could face prosecution and a fine of up to £2,500, which is 5,000 New Zealand dollars.
That sounds a bit draconian.
Yes, the law allows border officials to retain and confiscate devices if tourists resist a search. Foreign nationals who travel to the US and refuse access to the phones can be denied entry if they are deemed to be non-cooperative. Civil liberties groups have reacted to the law with dismay. It's being, let's just say, it's being referred to as a digital strip search by opponents. Allowing customs to be able to demand the right to examine and capture this information is a grave invasion of personal privacy of both the person who owns the device and people they communicate with. The reality of this law is it gives customs the power to take and force unlock of people's smartphones without justification or appeal, which is exactly what customs has always wanted. The Act requires that customs officials must have a reasonable cause, but apparently border staff do not have to prove this before they confiscate your device, and nor is there any meaningful way to protest or appeal at the time of confiscation. So that appears very much a shoot first, ask questions later kind of approach. Reasonable cause, well, we found stuff on your phone that we don't like. So that's rather, yeah.
I won't be going to New Zealand in a hurry then.
No, a bit of a pity because of all the places in the world I've probably wanted to go, New Zealand is one of them.
It's a lovely country.
Yeah. Don't like that though. Sorry, don't like that one little bit. And equally scary, very scary. A recent startup breach exposed billions of data points. This was on Wired. I don't think you've seen this one, Nick. But basically, there is a company called Apollo who are a data aggregator and analytics service aimed at helping sales team know who to contact. They claim, apparently, to have 200 million contacts and information on over 10 million companies. However, security founder Vinny Troja, who routinely scans the internet for unprotected, accessible databases, discovered Apollo's trove containing 212 million contacts and 9 billion data points related to companies and organisations, all of which was readily available for anyone to access. Oops. There we go. That's pretty. That's kind
bonkers,
of
isn't it?
just combining all of the public data in one easily accessible location creates an inherent risk. If it leaks, as the Apollo data has, it enables scammers, fraudsters, phishers to craft compelling targeted attacks against huge numbers of people. The Apollo breach has an additionally problematic layer in that some client imported data was accessed without authorization, whatever that actually means. There is a high risk for fraud, spam, or other harmful actions when these type of data sets leak. So that's pretty bad.
Yeah, that's not good at all.
That's not good.
However, having said that, we're all used to getting spam and
Yeah.
and all those other things.
Of course, I think the problem with this is, as an individual, it probably doesn't affect you per se, because they're talking about companies, but that sort of data is very dangerous in the hands of people who want to conduct spear phishing or,
anyone who wants to do nasty things to you, basically.
Well, particularly to companies in this case.
Lower down, it says there were 125 million email addresses in total, and it's probably the largest email notification that "Have I been pwned?" has ever sent for one breach.
Oh dear.
My email address again then.
We're continually seeing massive breaches of data aggregators who hold people on information who have no idea their personal information has been used. I know that it's Apollo's customers who provide access to their customers, but the fact remains there are north of 100 million people who have no idea who Apollo is, nor that their information was exposed. Yes. Well,
do you know I've been helping out a couple of people this week at church with their computers, various problems, and it's so difficult to give them good advice. So one of them said, "My machine keeps asking me to update stuff, and I'm never sure whether to do it or not." And I say, "Yeah, you should keep your software up to date. If you're in a browser, completely ignore that."
Yeah.
I said, "How do I tell the difference?"
Yeah,
it's really hard to tell the difference, actually.
Yeah, that's right. You need to update your Flash.
For someone who doesn't know a lot about computers, to define exactly what they should take notice of and what they shouldn't.
Yes, indeed. Apparently, it looks like LinkedIn weren't very happy about it either. Our investigation into this claim found a third-party sales intelligence company not associated with LinkedIn was compromised and exposed a large set of data aggregated from social networks. Well, that's a very bad, very, very bad breach. There we go. Right. What else? The internet surges in interest. Sorry, not the internet. Interest surges in Tim Berners-Lee Inrupt, a startup out to remake the web.
Yeah, I thought this was an interesting story.
I think you might have heard, you might remember I mentioned Tim Berners-Lee and his Solid project a few weeks ago. This is related to that. Inrupt is a startup by Tim Berners-Lee. Inrupt is backing an open source project from Tim Berners-Lee called Solid, so it's related to that. And it's all about this data pods. which is about having access to your data and deciding who can and cannot have access to it. It's a potentially powerful idea. You'd own your own photos and so on. But to be honest, as they say, there are potential downsides. Interrupting visions is all paying for many services, which could curtail privacy problems. But let's face it, a lot of us like not having to pay. And a solid-based web could give us a lot of responsibility for micromanaging our own data.
Yes, which a lot of people don't want to have to do they?
No. Obviously, at the moment, it's very basic. I did actually sign up for an account, and what you get is a very basic dashboard. Obviously, it's for developers. The idea is to encourage developers to start working on things which would be solid compatible. It's interesting. I'm not sure that it will take off. At the moment, it all looks.
Well, it's very early days.
Oh, it is very
early days for something this size, potentially.
At the moment, it looks very techy, but as I say, it is for developers. So I don't know. And Andy Yen has.
Well, the internet.
Yes.
Its early days. You had to be a techie, otherwise you wouldn't find your way onto it.
Well, that is also true. And it has got Tim Berners-Lee behind it, and of course, Andy Yen from Proton, has said that he sees the future of the internet, or the next big wave of internet companies being ones, like Proton or maybe this Solid or whatever, where you pay a small fee, but what you're getting is privacy and security. So, who can tell? Who can tell? Early days. When I first went on the internet, in the late 90s, who would have thought it was about to do what it did and revolutionise the world in about 10 years?
No, you couldn't tell.
When I first started to use the internet, you're talking about, emailing was a bloody right game, because you had to have one thing to write the email in, and then another app to send it, and then a different app to download your email, and literally that was you had one to write it and one to send it and one to get a reply, and I think Mosaic was brand new. Pages mostly looked like a page of Courier. There we go. Who would have thought? And I remember reading pieces.
So it'll be interesting to see where this goes.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it possibly becoming a niche, if nothing else. And maybe it will become something that companies are more interested in. Perhaps if that Apollo were using it, they wouldn't have exposed however many 9 billion data points. There we go. It's one to watch for me. One to watch. I'm interested in that sort of thing. Like I say, I have signed up, and it's very, very basic. But then you can't recreate the World Wide Web was very basic when it started, so you can't judge on that, I guess.
I certainly like the concept of having your data under your control, rather than just giving it away to everybody, and then not knowing who's got what, basically.
Yeah. I mean, the idea is that you store your data in what they're calling pods, which it is personal online data stores. And the idea is that
literally you open up little bits of that information as necessary.
Yes. So if you if you sign up to a service, they say, "Can we have access to your address book?" You can say yes or no. It's got possibilities. It's got promise. Whether or not the general population will be interested enough to make a go of it, I don't know. But maybe corporations would. I could see why a lot of companies might be interested in such a way of working. Might take a lot.
Yeah, because one of the things that companies worry about these days is more and more stuff is moving to the web, and it's looking after their data.
Yeah, moving out to the cloud. There we are. This other one, apparently Microsoft this week released a Windows 10 October update and then pulled it again because apparently user files were going missing, which is not good, obviously. This one's on Windows Central, unsurprisingly.
It sounds spookily familiar to
yeah,
to another company that had a cloud service that would lose files occasionally.
So
Can't remember which company that was.
Nope. Okay, so the Windows 10 October update, known as version 1809, has been pulled amidst user files being deleted upon upgrade, which is bad, very bad. Windows Update media creation website as it investigates issues with the update deleting user files. Users first started reporting their documents folder had gone missing after an upgrade to the 2018 October update a few days ago. Microsoft has confirmed it is looking into the issue. Until the issue is fixed, the October update has been pulled and is no longer available to download. And there is no word on when it will be made available.
That's certainly an advocate for not jumping too early.
Yeah, Microsoft. Yeah, Microsoft advise. Well, they say advises here, but advises not clean installing the update either. It is possible this issue will be fixed in a cumulative update, or it might be a big enough problem to require the compilation of another RTM build, as it had to do with the April 2018 update. Yeah. Microsoft has been struggling to assure quality with its last few feature update releases at launch, which does not paint a positive picture. If you have already upgraded and are experiencing issues, you should be able to recover to the previous update by going settings, update, security, recovery, go back to the previous version of Windows 10. If you have already upgraded and found your files are missing, Microsoft recommends you contact the support hotline. Well, that's not very good, is it? Oops.
No.
And
These things happen, though, as we've
they do,
found out in the past.
But that one you would have thought shouldn't have, deleting the documents folder is a pretty bad thing to be doing. That one should probably not have made it past Q&A. There we are.
Yeah, particularly if you rely on those documents. Yeah.
Yeah, let's not. But, as we said earlier, these things happen, and Apple have had slip-ups. So, let's not rag too hard. It can happen to anyone, I'm sure. And pretty much the last one was this Hyperloop. Hyperloop company unveils a full-scale 750 mph passenger capsule, which we were talking about before the show, Nick. Which is pretty damn impressive, I'll be honest.
So this is presumably a capsule that is capable of doing 750 miles per hour.
Yes, down a Hyperloop tube, which are, of course, are they? I don't know if they're vacuum or if they're pressurized or what. They're something or other, aren't they? Are they vacuumed? I don't know. Low pressure, possibly. And maglev. The Hyperloop Transportation Technologies, based in Los Angeles, showed off a sleek capsule capable of carrying 30 to 40 passengers. This capsule is the real deal, said Hyperloop TT CEO, who unveiled it last week in Spain, where it was built. It will go to Toulouse, France, for testing next year, as the company prepares to build an initial Hyperloop segment in China and Abu Dhabi. Well, they envisage the capsule being able to travel the more than 400 miles from Los Angeles to San Francisco in 36 minutes, levitating magnetically inside a tube for a lack of friction. And as we know, several companies, including those headed by some of the best-known tycoons, are working to be among the first to create a system which would compete for both with high-speed trains and airlines. Richard Branson, who is chairman of the Virgin Hyperloop, told CNBC in April that he wants to be in operation within 3 years. Elon Musk, who is the CEO of Tesla, of course, and SpaceX, has been backing the Boring Company in its tunnel-digging efforts to build a Hyperloop. There we are.
Looks like they're coming, doesn't it?
Yes, it
One
does.
way or another.
As we said before the show, you said to me, do you think this is a viable thing? Now, the whole kind of Hyperloop, ultra high speed, this holds 40 people, so it's more of a coach than a train. But that idea, I can remember, reading similar sort of things in science fiction stories when I was a boy, so, in the 60s.
Yeah.
But I think, like some of these things, people say, "Oh, it's never going to happen. It's never going to happen." Sometimes these things just need the technology to come together, and the technology, I think, people say, "Oh, well, we've been digging tunnels for a long time," which is true, of course, but to dig a tunnel suitable for a hyperloop, it's not just like digging a train tunnel, is it? Yeah,
No,
it's got to be, a precise tube. It requires sort of levels of engineering which you need the sort of modern computer controlled devices to make. I think it's coming.
As long as I don't have to test it out before it's ready.
Yeah, you don't want to be the first. You don't want to be the one squashed in the back like a flattened.
Well, I could do with losing some weight, but that's probably a rather drastic way of doing it.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't want to end up squashed at the back like a poor flat hedgehog, do you? I do think they're coming. How long they will take, I don't know. And but one of the reasons that I believe that they are coming is not only do you have people like Elon and Richard Branson and the like behind it. I think as we go forward and people, environmental concerns, which are something that people should have been worrying about 25 years ago, have now finally started to, break into the public perception. I think, airlines are going to become more and more looked at as not a very clean way to travel.
Yes.
You burn an awful lot of fuel.
It does make you think, though, doesn't it? If this goes forward as fast as they're hoping, it'll HS2 up and running. It'll be completely obsolete.
Yeah. Although I don't know, is Britain actually big enough to have a hyperloop? If you know what I mean.
Well, they're talking about putting it between cities, aren't they? So I don't know.
Yeah, but I mean, they're talking about Los Angeles to. You might, I'm thinking on that scale, you might get one from London to Glasgow.
Yes,
or
from Cornwall to Scotland or something.
Yeah, London to Glasgow maybe, but, I can't.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
It's not saying you can't do it.
It wouldn't have time to get up to speed, would it? Slowing it down.
You could probably do it, but you wouldn't probably get a 750 mph train because, you'd never accelerate and decelerate in time.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought of that.
I mean, it strikes me as the sort of technology that you're going to want to say, right? If we could go from, New York to Los Angeles, or Denver to, I don't know, Austin, Texas, or something.
Yes, rather than flying.
Yeah. Whereas, but then again, the technical challenge. I mean, I think part of it is they're always talking about Los Angeles, San Francisco, because that's a sort of relatively straight line along the coast.
Right.
Trying to dig a tunnel from somewhere like New York to, I don't know, Los Angeles, you've got an awful long way to go, and a lot of challenges, haven't you? You've got the Rockies and all that. Anyway, there we are. But I still think it will come. It will start off in a few places. Maybe it will be, I suspect it will start off in rich places where people, Silicon Valley or whatever. But there we are. There is a fully built module there showing how they're going to go and test it later next year. So that was an interesting story. That was a very interesting story.
Cool looking.
It is quite cool looking, isn't it? Sort of, it looks slightly like a blind Concorde with no wings.
Yes.
As it were. And that's pretty much it, really. We've got just a snippet because I thought this was somewhat hilarious. It's only vaguely related to technology, to be honest. But for those who know of Banksy and his sort of graffiti-based artwork, Banksy had a print on sale at Sotheby's, which was the girl with a balloon, acrylic and stencils on board, canvas on board, I should say, and it sold for just over £1 million, and then promptly shredded itself. because he'd installed a shredder in the bottom of the frame, and after the hammer went down, the artwork descended through the bottom of the frame, coming out shredded, which was very Banksy.
You gotta love these artist types.
It was very funny. I think very Banksy. As my daughter said, the only problem is the art world will now probably make the strips worth $500,000 each, which would kind of defeat Banksy's point. But I don't know. As you said earlier, it wasn't cross shredded into little bits. It came out in the sort of spaghetti form. There's a link there with a picture. It's very funny. Somebody's managed to snap a shot of it, half in the frame and half dangly bits coming out of the bottom. And as you and I said, I suspect in order to achieve that effect, either Banksy or an operative on his behalf was in the sale room with a remote control, because the timing seemed to have been absolutely perfect. The hammer went down, as in going, gone, sold to you, sir, and then it went...
And there were audible gasps in the room.
Yeah, yes, and in the picture you can see people like shocked, hands in front of mouths, almost like Scooby-Doo-esque in some ways. So I thought that was amusing.
That was very good.
And worth a chirp. I suppose it should be worth a hoot, actually, this time. Night owl. Yeah,
very good.
Very good, yeah. Night owl. I mentioned a few weeks ago, and several people have also said that the Mojave dark mode, night owl, you can't toggle it easily. You have to mess about going to system prefs and then so on. Night Owl is a menu bar app which allows you to toggle between light and dark mode simply. And there's a link in there. That's actually at nightowl.cramza.xyz. So the link will be in the show notes. And it allows you to toggle between light and dark mode with the press of a button.
No, I haven't updated to Mojave yet. I need to do a clone before I
do a clone
to it.
Definitely do a full clone before you update. I haven't really run into any problems with Mojave yet, other than the Apple News annoyance. But always do a full clone before you back up in case something goes horribly wrong. Doesn't usually these days, let's be honest, not often these days, but there's always a chance, isn't there? There's always a chance of something going bad. You can never tell.
Yeah, you never know.
We are. So, Nick, I think we've done, don't you?
Yes.
You are, of course, occasionally on the Twitter.
Yes, at Spligosh, Spligosh.
Yeah, and you sometimes also, apart from this show, you sometimes turn up on Bart Buchot's Let's Talk Apple.
Yes, sorry. I was going to be on the last one with you guys, but a personal arrangement got in my way, unfortunately.
Something happened. That's fine. That's fine. Mark, I don't know if Bart invited Mark at the last moment. So he felt a little intimidated that he'd been taken over by the Essential Apple podcast. If there'd been three of us there, I think he'd have definitely felt that he'd been overrun. But there we go. I, of course, am on the Twitter as @Serenak, and that's SERENAK. The show is, of course, Essential Apple. All our stuff's over at essentialapple.com. And that's about it, I think. Don't forget, we're in the Slack where lots of chatter goes on. If you want to join the Slack, simply follow the link in the show notes. And I think that's about it. Oh, one thing I must mention, don't forget the Joe Cassell 30% offer. Joe Cassell Take Control books. You still have until the 30th of November to make a purchase using either the code Essential Apple or following the link in the show notes, which will get you your 30% off. There we go. Thank you, Joe. We appreciate that. And on that note, I think we'll just say goodbye. Goodbye.
Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Bye.
Bye. You've been listening to the Essential Apple podcast, and I'd like to say if you enjoy the show and would like to support us, feel free to go over to the website essentialapple.com and you will find links to both Patreon and the Pinecast Tips Jar, where you can make a donation towards the costs of the show, or even if you're really keen, you could set up a recurring payment. And thank you very, very much to all the people who already do support us. We really do appreciate you very much indeed. This show is, of course, part of the My Mac podcasting network, where you can find a variety of other shows like the My Mac podcast with Guy and Gaz, the G-Men, Tech Fan with Tim and David, the Nintendo Club podcast, the geekiest show ever, the Three Geeky Ladies, Bart Bouchot's and his wonderful Let's Talk Apple, and possibly some more that I've forgotten. So why not go over to mymac.com, take a look at the available podcasts, and take a listen.
Yeah, I think just a straight ad, don't you?
Yeah.
Like what? What would we say? Like Tech Fan Podcast or?
Are you interested in technology and gadgets?
Uh-huh.
Do you want to listen to two guys who know technology and gadgets?
Are we claiming to be those guys?
Yes. Well, there we go. Are we claiming to be those guys? You be the judge. Tech Fan Podcast.
Yeah, that'll work. Let's use that as an ad.
Okay.
Has been the Essential Apple Podcast. Goodbye and thank you for listening.